Emma was 19 when she learned the art of the transaction. In the sun-bleached suburbs of Sydney's outer west, where the cicadas screamed through endless summer nights, she had grown up watching her single mother trade hours at the bottle shop for rent money that never quite covered the bills. At 16, she'd already figured it out. Older men liked pretty girls who laughed at their jokes and let them feel powerful. By 18, she had profiles on 3 sugar daddy apps, carefully curated photos that showed just enough skin to promise everything without giving it away for free. She told herself it wasn't desperation, it was strategy. The first one bought her a second-hand Corolla. The second paid for her dental work and a trip to the Gold Coast. The third had started getting handsy in ways that made her block him after 2 weeks. But the rush never faded. The clink of a black Amex on a restaurant table, the way their eyes lingered when she crossed her legs, the quiet voice in her head whispering, "You're worth this." That was how she met Marcus Hale. He messaged her on a Tuesday night in late March 2018. Profile picture: a silver-haired man in a tailored suit standing on the deck of a yacht in Sydney Harbour. 48, he wrote. Property developer, widower, no kids. "I don't do games," his first message read. "I like smart girls who know what they want. Dinner tomorrow? My shout." Emma's stomach flipped the way it always did. She replied before she could overthink it. They met at a quiet Italian place in Double Bay. Marcus was taller than his photos suggested, broad-shouldered, with a slow smile that never quite reached his pale blue eyes. He listened, really listened, while she talked about her TAFE course in beauty therapy that she kept skipping for better-paying dates. He ordered the most expensive bottle on the list without glancing at the price. When he paid, he slipped the waiter a $100 tip like it was nothing. "You're different," he told her in the car park later, leaning against a black Range Rover that smelled of leather and money. "Most girls your age want Instagram likes. You want something real, security, power. I can give you both." Emma felt the familiar thrill. She let him kiss her goodnight. Slow, controlled, nothing she couldn't handle. When he asked to see her again that weekend, she said yes. The next 3 weeks were a blur of perfect dates and quiet warnings she ignored. He took her to a private beach at Palm Beach, where the only other people were staff. He bought her a rose gold Rolex she hid from her mother. He never pushed for sex, which should have been a relief, but somehow made her more nervous. There was always a moment when the conversation lulled, when the lights were low, when his gaze would slide over her like he was measuring her, calculating. One Friday, he suggested a drive. "I've got a little place up past the Blue Mountains," he said. "No phones, no noise. Just us, a fire, and the stars. You've been working hard. Let me spoil you properly." Emma hesitated. Her best friend had texted earlier, "Girl, you sure about this one? He's old enough to be your dad." But the alternative was another night in her mother's cramped flat, listening to the neighbor's TV through the wall. She packed an overnight bag. They left Sydney at dusk. The freeway gave way to winding mountain roads, then to dirt tracks lined with gum trees that looked black against the headlights. Marcus played soft jazz and talked about his late wife, how she'd died in a car accident years ago, how lonely the big house felt. Emma reached over and squeezed his hand. He smiled that same smile. They arrived at a weatherboard cabin tucked deep in the bush, miles from anywhere. No streetlights, no neighbors, just the hum of cicadas and the distant call of a currawong. Inside, the place was surprisingly modern. Polished concrete floors, a king bed with crisp white sheets, a wine fridge humming in the corner. Marcus poured her a glass of something expensive and red. "To new beginnings," he said, clinking his glass against hers. She drank. The room tilted a little, but she laughed it off. "Strong stuff." His eyes never left her face. "You have no idea." That was the last clear memory. When she woke, her wrists were zip-tied to the bedhead. Her mouth tasted of metal and fear. Marcus stood at the foot of the bed, no longer smiling. In his hand was a hunting knife that caught the moonlight coming through the slatted blinds. "You're the 8th one," he said quietly, almost gently. "They never learn. Pretty girls who think money can fix everything, you all come so willingly." Emma screamed. The sound was swallowed by the bush outside. He was efficient. No rage, no theatrics, just the cold precision of a man who had done this before. When it was over, he wrapped her in a blue tarp from the shed, loaded her into the back of the Range Rover, and drove another 20 minutes deeper into the national park. The grave was already dug, shallow, just deep enough that the dingoes wouldn't get too excited too soon. He dropped her in, covered her with dirt and leaf litter, and patted the ground smooth like he was tucking in a child. Then he drove home, showered, and booked a flight to Melbourne for a business meeting. Emma's mother reported her missing 3 days later. Police took it seriously at first. 19-year-old girl, last seen with an older man whose description didn't match anyone on file. They found the restaurant receipt, the Range Rover's number plate from CCTV, but Marcus Hale had vanished. The cabin was registered to a shell company that led nowhere. Her phone pinged its last signal near Katoomba before going dark. Search parties combed the mountains for weeks. Drones, cadaver dogs, nothing. The media called her Sydney's sugar daddy vanishing. True crime forums and early Facebook groups posted dramatic reconstructions. Her mother aged 10 years and 6 months. Every anniversary, a new appeal. Every lead went cold. 5 years passed. In a quiet cul-de-sac on the edge of the Blue Mountains, Barry Thompson lived alone with his Kelpie cross, Rusty. Barry was 71, retired truck driver, and the kind of neighbor who kept to himself. One crisp autumn morning in 2023, Rusty started digging furiously at the base of the back fence where it backed onto the national park. Barry yelled at him twice. On the third yell, Rusty came trotting back with something white and curved clenched in his jaws. A human femur. Barry called 000. Forensic teams arrived within hours. The shallow grave had been disturbed by years of rain and animals, but enough remained. DNA from a tooth matched Emma Hargrove within 48 hours. The top fragment still bore traces of the same blue dye, sold at Bunnings in 2018. Tire tracks, faint but recoverable, matched the tread pattern of a Range Rover registered in 2017. The case that had gone cold reignited like a bushfire. Detectives reopened the file and started pulling every sugar daddy app conversation from Emma's old phone backup. They found the messages from Marcus Hale. They found the others, the 7 girls before her, all between 17 and 21, all lured the same way, all missing, all presumed dead. What they uncovered next turned the investigation into a national nightmare. Marcus Hale was not one man. He was 3. 3 brothers, Marcus, Damien, and Liam Hale, operating under rotating identities for over a decade. Wealthy property developers with impeccable public faces and a private hunting ground that stretched from the Blue Mountains to the Victorian border. They had a system. One brother made contact, another handled transport, the third maintained the clean-up properties. They targeted girls who fit a very specific profile: pretty, ambitious, slightly broken, and desperate enough to ignore the red flags. They kept trophies. They kept videos. Police raided 3 properties simultaneously at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday. In a hidden basement beneath a McMansion in Castle Hill, they found a room lined with soundproofing and shelves of carefully labeled USB drives. The oldest file dated back to 2015. Marcus Hale was arrested at Sydney Airport trying to board a flight to Bangkok using yet another alias. Damien was pulled over on the Hume Highway with a girl in the passenger seat who would later tell detectives she'd been promised a weekend getaway. Liam tried to run through the bush behind his property in the Southern Highlands. The police dog brought him down before he reached the creek. The Hale brothers, Australia's most prolific serial killer ring in a generation, were charged with 8 confirmed murders and another 5 suspected. The shallow grave where Emma had lain undiscovered for 5 years became the key that unlocked everything. At the sentencing hearing, Emma's mother stood in the front row, holding a photo of her daughter at 19, smiling in the sunlight outside that Double Bay restaurant. She didn't cry. She just stared at the 3 men in the dock until they looked away. Rusty the Kelpie received a lifetime supply of steak from the New South Wales Police Force and a medal for outstanding service in the detection of serious crime. Emma's name was finally spoken aloud again, not as a vanished girl, not as a cautionary tale but as the one who came back from the dirt to drag her killers into the light. And somewhere in the Blue Mountains, the cicadas still screamed through the long summer nights, but the bush no longer kept their secrets.